Hello viewers, this is Houndawg and it's time to fly one of the most famous and recognizable U.S. Navy warbirds that flew during World War II and the Korean War, the Vought Sikorsky F4U Corsair. In February 1938, the U.S. Navy Bureau of Aeronautics published two requests for proposals for twin-engine and single-engine carrier-based fighters. For the single-engine fighter, the Navy requested the maximum obtainable speed and a stalling speed not higher than 70 miles per hour with a range of 1,000 miles. The fighter had to carry 4 guns or 3 with increased ammunition. An initial requirement for anti-aircraft bombs to be carried on the wing was later canceled. In June 1938, the U.S. Navy signed a contract with the United Aircraft Corporation, parent company of Vought Sikorsky, for the XF4U-1 prototype. The first flight of the XF4U was made on 29 May 1940, and on 1 October 1940, the XF4U became the first single-engine U.S. fighter to fly faster than 400 miles per hour. Formal U.S. Navy acceptance trials for the XF4U began in February 1941, and on 2 April, Vought received a contract for 584 F4U Corsairs. The first production F4U performed its initial flight a year later, on 24 June 1942. The Corsair was 33 feet 8 inches long, with a wingspan of 41 feet and a maximum weight of 14,670 pounds. It was initially powered by a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine, driving a 13-foot 4-inch 3-bladed Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller. Later models were upgraded with a dual-stage supercharger, producing 2,450 horsepower and a 4-bladed prop. Corsair ultimately reached a maximum speed of 446 miles per hour, with a service ceiling of 41,500 feet and a range of over 1,000 miles. It was armed with 6 50 caliber machine guns, or 4 20mm cannons in the wings. It could carry a 4,000-pound load of HVAR rockets and bombs. To accommodate the requirement for folding wings, the main landing gear fully retracted and rotated back into the wing. This required longer but weaker landing gear struts to provide ground clearance for the large propeller. The designer's solution was an inverted gull wing, which considerably shortened the required length of the main gear struts. Great efforts were made to make the Corsair as streamlined as possible. Protruding air scoops were eliminated by locating the oil cooler and supercharger intercoolers in the leading edge of the wing roots. The large aluminum fuselage panels were attached to the frame with a newly developed technique of spot welding, thus eliminating rivets. Corsair was the last American-produced fighter aircraft with fabric as the skin covering for the top and bottom of each outer wing and for the ailerons, elevators, and rudder. The elevators were also constructed from plywood. These construction methods allowed the Corsair to achieve slower carrier landing speeds with full 60% flaps. During the F4U's early carrier trials, a number of serious and sometimes fatal handling issues were identified. The Corsair's left wing could stall and drop rapidly and without warning during slow carrier landings, and if the throttle was advanced too quickly, then the fighter would flip on the left side. The inverted gull wing shape interfered with elevator authority, which resulted in difficulty recovering from spins. Visibility during carrier landings was extremely poor due to the Corsair's long nose and birdcage canopy. During landing approaches, it was also found that hydraulic oil from the 14 cowl flaps could spatter onto the windscreen, further reducing visibility. The undercarriage strut also bottomed out on carrier landings and rebounded badly, causing the aircraft to bounce out of control. Meanwhile, the more docile and simpler to build Grumman F6F Hellcat had begun entering service as a carrier-based fighter. The Navy regarded the over-engineered and hard-to-maintain Corsair as fundamentally flawed for carrier operations and preferred the slower Hellcat. Consequently, the Navy released the F4U to the U.S. Marine Corps, who immediately used the Corsair's high speed and devastating firepower to achieve widespread success from land bases in the Pacific Ocean. The most famous of these Marine units was VMF 214 Black Sheep Squadron, commanded by Major Pappy Boyington, who was credited with 22 kills in the F4U. The Corsair's distinct look and safety issues earned it numerous nicknames, including Hog, Hognose, Hose Nose, Ensign Eliminator, Bent Wing Eliminator, Bent Wing Widowmaker, Bent Wing Bird, U-Bird, and finally Whistling Death or Screaming Death, due to the loud, high-pitched noise made by the aircraft in a high-speed dive attack. In November 1943, the Royal Navy received 95 F4Us, which were immediately put into carrier operations. Considering the Corsair as their best, if not only option, the British solved the landing visibility problem by approaching the carrier in a left-hand descending racetrack turn, which allowed the pilot to keep the carrier deck in view until over the carrier ramp. The top cowl flaps were also wired down to eliminate the problem with the hydraulic oil leaks on the canopy. Forward visibility was further improved by replacing the bird cage canopy with a clear plexiglass bubble and raising the pilot seat by 7 inches. A rectangular plexiglass panel was inset into the cockpit floor to allow the pilot to see directly beneath the aircraft during landings. Vaults modifications included adding a bleed valve for the landing gear oleo struts to gradually relieve hydraulic pressure and minimize bounce during carrier landings. A small 6-inch long stall strip was added to the leading edge of the right wing to allow the right wing to stall at the same time as the left. In April 1944, the U.S. Navy, under increasing danger from kamikaze attacks, finally accepted the F4U for shipboard operations, a full 2 years after the original introduction into the Navy. Figures compiled at the end of the war indicate that the Corsairs flew 64,051 operational sorties, or 44% of total fighter sorties, with only 9,581 sorties, or 15%, flown from carriers. Corsair pilots claimed 2,140 air combat victories against 189 losses to enemy aircraft, for an overall kill ratio of over 11 to 1. The Corsair delivered 70% of total bombs dropped by U.S. fighter bombers during the war. Corsair production expanded beyond Vault to include the Brewster F3A and the Goodyear FG models, with more than 12,571 aircraft and 16 models built, including radar-equipped night fighters. The Corsair was continuously modified and improved throughout the war, and by 1945 over 3,000 minor and major improvements had been made. Corsair continued to serve long after the end of World War II, and the F4U-6 that served in the Korean War was capable of carrying over 8,200 pounds of bombs.